Hey, everybody, welcome to Breakfast All Day. Christy, Matt, Alonso.
Hello.
Hello.
Getting on into end of year / award season / Christmas / Hanukkah / Kwanzaa / all the things. And kicking off with a much talked about film, Queen and Slim.
You should describe it, Alonso, since you've seen it.
Okay, sure. So I need all my names in front of me. Sorry, I wasn't ready for that.
Sorry.
So Daniel Kaluuya stars opposite a newcomer mainly known for British television.
Jodie Turner-Smith.
Jodie Turner-Smith, thank you. And it's a first date. It's a Tinder date. They've never met before. It's kind of awkward. They aren't necessarily clicking right away. But as he is driving her home, they are pulled over by the police, and things do not go well. She is a lawyer and demands that the cop do what he is legally supposed to do. The cop takes this as a potential threat and shoots her. Kaluuya's character grabs the gun and shoots the policeman, and suddenly they are on the run, and they are fugitives from justice. And so this involves them driving from Cleveland, Ohio to New Orleans, where her uncle lives, and trying to figure out how to escape, what they can, how they might be able to get away. And then, getting to know each other in the process of this thing. They're two relative strangers who've been thrust into this dangerous situation and find themselves now together, whether they like it or not. And so we see this sort of relationship kind of blossom under terrifying circumstances.
Yeah, we have seen a lot of films in the last couple of years where a police shooting is the catalyst for the action, and it's, sadly a reflection of what the world is like now and what the world has been like for many years now. But this is a very different version of that story, and it feels incredibly new and alive and refreshing, while also having its roots in this very traditional kind of like outlaws on the run kind of romantic drama. I mean, they become dubbed like the Black Bonnie and Clyde, whether they want to be that or not.
Lovers in Flight, is a whole sort of subgenre of movies.
And so it does both those things really, really well. Melina Matsoukas directed it. Lena Waithe wrote it. Yes. I think it's her first screenplay, right?
Yes, and I think it was from a story idea from James Fry,
which
of
is
all
interesting.
People.
Yeah.
He's having a week with the Million Little Pieces movie.
That's also out this week. It's not good,
but but yes, this is a really interesting piece, and I think here's the thing. I think that this movie has two great acts and a great ending. But I think there are some choices that get made later on that are a little... The first one, I thought, okay, this is an odd choice, but I'll go with it because, obviously Lena Waithe is, coming to this from a perspective that's not necessarily mine. But then a second thing happens that not only on its face seemed strange to me, but seemed very strange after the first thing that happened. And I'm being super vague because I don't want to get into spoilers here.
Is it the weird cross-cutting?
No, it is decisions made by secondary characters.
Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Yes.
Matt, what are your thoughts?
I like this movie a lot. First of all, the leads have, I think, terrific chemistry.
Oh, totally. And they're both British, but you'd never know it.
Yeah, you'd never know it. They're both very good, and as the script has been written to see their relationship grow under pressure, I bought a lot of that. I thought that was relatively grounded. I, too, had a little bit of a question as to how things get started, but again, like, I have the luxury that if I get pulled over, I know that I did something wrong, and I have the luxury of walking away from that, or the assumption that I'm going to walk away from that alive.
Right.
No one's ever had to have the talk with me, so I can't really look at somebody else's decision in a movie like this and really judge it that way. Where my problem is with this movie, and look, I think there's a lot of great stuff. I think it's beautifully shot. The pace can be languid at times, but I think that works. But I felt like this movie has a lot of things to say, and in some cases isn't particularly subtle about it. And that's where it touches on a lot of factors around race and culture and kind of how we treat each other and what the country is like versus what we see the country's like versus what it's really like, or some people's differing perceptions. And I just felt like as it brings those things up, sometimes it's not particularly subtle about it.
Oh, no, not at all.
Right. And that's where to the point, and I guess I'm being nice, like it's a little too on the nose in a couple of places. And that's what bothered me about it. But I found myself really invested in these characters, and really tense. And the movie shows relatively early on that like things will happen that happen in a flash. And I was, by the end of the movie, I'm kind of low key terrified through the whole thing because God only knows what can happen out of nowhere. So for the most part, it really worked for me. Again, like it's a little too on the nose with its statements in some places, but other than that, also real treat to see Flea in this. That was a surprise. I mean, Bokeem Woodbine I think is really good in this, but then Flea shows up kind of out of nowhere, almost unrecognizably, and I thought that was kind of cool.
And I liked India Moore a lot too.
Yeah.
It's it did a couple of things well at the same time, right? Because as you say, it's super stylish. Tat Radcliffe shot it. It's beautiful. It's got like these rich textures and colors to it, but there's also kind of like a gritty realism to it at the same time.
And we talk about cinematographers who do or don't know how to shoot black performers and light them in a way that is flattering and that like gives them presence on the screen. I think he does that really well.
These are both gorgeous to look at actors who are lighted in a very flattering way. It's a little long. It's like 2 hours and
10 minutes.
12 minutes long. And you could argue that you need that space. You need that downtime to show them just hanging out in the car. A lot of it is just them in various cars driving and getting to know each other and maybe not talking at all, not talking, and that chemistry is great, as you say. Perhaps you need that kind of space to make that bond feel believable so that what happens by the end is believable.
Yeah.
In the doing of the thing, though, it feels a little slow.
You are sort of telling this relationship story while at the same time you're telling like a fugitive narrative, but then also this sort of larger narrative about the police and black people in the United States and, how that stuff handles. So I think I'll give them the space for that. I think you do kind of have to have those kind of pauses and those, because it is this thing where like this is the kind of movie that studio notes could have turned into a farce. Like let's take out the shooting of the policemen. They're strangers and they get handcuffed together and they have to go cross country and
turn it into a buddy movie.
Exactly, and so but the fact that she can do the serious stuff and touch upon these issues while also telling the story about this man and this woman and who they are and what brings them together eventually, even though initially they don't mesh at all. That part I really admired. Like I said, there are things that the two of them I followed throughout. Other characters do stuff where I was like, and that took me out of the film a little.
And Matt, you mentioned, and this is a good point, that it is a little on the nose as far as the conversations people have surrounding the precipitating event and just the world we live in general. And I wonder whether you can make a movie like this without it having be a little on the nose, like The Hate You Give was and Blind Spotting was. And I wonder whether you have to have these blunt conversations when you're approaching this topic, which is so painfully relevant. I don't disagree with you. Dave's pointing and nodding at me in the kitchen. Thank you, Dave. Yeah. I got the quiet nod from Dave.
I think you have a point. I think that when you're talking about cinema that has an sort of what you might call like an activist point of view or is trying to sort of express some political ideology, I mean, there are ways to do it subtly, but I think that in a moment of crisis, like I think back on, say, like the new queer cinema, which was so much a response to like, hey, we're all dropping dead in massive numbers and the government isn't doing anything about it. And, this is another, hey, we're being shot in massive numbers and nobody's doing anything about it. I think that there's an urgency and an anger that comes with that kind of storytelling that you don't have the luxury of being subtle necessarily.
Yeah, I guess my take on that a little bit is there's certain times that the movie shows us rather than tells us. Like there's a scene where they're driving. One of the many scenes, but there's differing perceptions of whether or not someplace they're driving through is beautiful, and that's a moment that we're shown. But then they talk about the Bokeem Woodbine's character and why he is the way he is, and we're told rather than shown all that much. And so there's maybe it's a little bit of that. Like sometimes it just feels a little spoon fed, over the top, a little bit too much for me, right? Rather than show us, it's like, well, this happens. Somebody says this is because of that, and it's a little like, well, you've been showing us all this other stuff all along.
Why are you holding our hand now?
Right. Why are you like, okay, I'm with you. Why do you keep holding my hand now?
What's your number then? You said 8.
8. Yeah. 8.
I'll remind you. You said 8.
Yeah,
I'm saying
it's absolutely worth seeing.
I'm saying 8.2, Alonso.
I said 7.2, but I totally think people should check this out. I'm very excited to see what this filmmaker does next.
Absolutely.
I loved looking at this movie, and I think those lead performances are great, and I think this is a very provocative examination of, a genuinely pressing issue right now.
Our number is a 7.8. It's at 83% on the tomato meter.
Hey, thanks for watching. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on social media. We are on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at BeFastAllDay. And perhaps you might want to be generous this holiday season and visit patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. We have lots of extra content for our subscribers.
So much extra content.
A lot
Why don't you
this
tell
week.
them about all of the extra content that goes up this week?
Staggering amount.
4 different clips.
Yeah, we are talking about The Mandalorian. We're talking about Watchmen. We're talking about His Dark Materials. We're talking about The Morning Show. So we're just like all over the map for cable and streaming. All the hot shows that you're talking about right now, we're talking about them too. You'll want to see that, and you can only see it if you become a Patreon subscriber. Thanks for
guys.
watching.
Bye.
Bye.